Well, good afternoon, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to everybody who's either joining us live now or who is catching up later on this Lincoln Live Lounge. My name is Professor Liz Mossop. I'm a Deputy Vice Chancellor here at the University of Lincoln, where I look after the students and the student experience. And it's my absolute pleasure here to be to welcome two very, very special and important guests to talk about a topic that is very, very close to my heart and very close to both of your hearts, I know, which is the power of education. So we'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. But I'd very much like if you could both introduce yourselves. So Diane, who is known to all of us here at the university because she's very importantly our Pro-Chancellor, so she helps us run the university. But Di, perhaps you could just say a little bit more about who you are and what you do, and perhaps a little bit about education as well.
Hello, everyone. This is such a pleasure. I always love doing things for the university. So my background is I'm a museum curator. I've been that for more years than I really want to admit to. And my job has always been education focused. So the job of museums, of course, is to tell stories and help educate people about the past. But my own personal journey is slightly different because I didn't get to go to university at the time when most people went to university. So I came back to formal education quite late on. And actually when, fortunately, my career didn't need it. But I do think it's a really important bedrock. And I have to say that I think my eyes were opened as to how bad my informal education had been without the discipline of that kind of formal education side. And I'm so Grace recognises that. So I'm Director General of the Imperial War Museums in London. I've been here 12 and a half years. And we just love the idea that being a historian, that our identity, our knowledge, the way we think about the world, the way we participate in the world is all based on the quality of education that we get.
Fantastic. Thank you, Di. So I'm going to pass over to Grace now. And Grace, who was a student here and then was one of our student union officers. So we know each other quite well. But Grace, do you want to say a little bit about your background?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here. My name's Grace and I'm 24 and I live in East London now. But I studied BA International Relations and Politics at the University of Lincoln and I graduated in 2019. I became really interested in sustainability and student action while I was a student at Lincoln. And so in my final year, I ran in the Students' Union elections and I was elected as the Vice President of Welfare and Community. So I was a lead officer on issues of student welfare and responsible for empowering and facilitating student liberation campaigning and charitable fundraising on campus. And I also really worked to shape the role in terms of advocating for sustainability and climate action in both the union and the university. I had the most incredible time at Lincoln and through my journey as a student and at the Students' Union, both of which have absolutely shaped me into the person that I am today. And I'm so thankful for the people that I met there and the opportunities that were afforded to me during my time. But after leaving the Students' Union and leaving Lincoln, I joined SOS UK as a project and campaign manager. I manage SOS UK's sustainability, engagement and education programmes and projects at universities, NHS trusts, businesses and community organisations around London and the south of the UK. And I manage the Teach the Future campaign nationally, which is I get to work with school pupils and students across the 4 nations who are campaigning for curriculum reform in light of the climate emergency, which is just really amazing. And they inspire me every day through their hope and resolve that through education we can solve the world's greatest problems together. So that's a little bit about me. It's really great to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Grace. And it's lovely to have you back. We always love hearing from our alumni. It's so important that we hear what you're doing. Such an exciting job that you have. So thank you so much for joining us today. So the quote that has inspired today's conversation is a quote that is attributed to Nelson Mandela. So apparently at a speech at Madison Park High School, actually the anniversary of this is today, the 23rd of June in 1990. He made this statement that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And that statement means quite a lot to us at the University of Lincoln, because we actually have it inscribed on the wall of our main academic building. I'm sure you'll remember, Grace and Di, we walk past it quite a lot as on our way to and from meetings. And I often look up at that statement when I'm having a bad day and think, this is what this is all about. This is why we are here. So I just wondered if we could kick off. Di, perhaps you could say a little bit about how education is powerful for you in your current role and what you do.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I one of the reasons that I love working with the University of Lincoln is it kind of aligns with what I do in my day job, which is we are a knowledge industry, we're a knowledge business. And so that whole thing about how research works, how you empower people with knowledge, is part of our kind of mission as a museum. So our educational mission is to create better global citizens. And in that, what we mean is people who can understand how conflicts happen, the debate around conflict, and how they can actually change the world by knowing something of our history. I mean, most wars come because of clashes of culture or religion, or just literally people who are mad with power. And there's probably a few more than you would think. And that whole thing about how you assimilate information, how you make judgment calls on pieces of information. I mean, I find it really annoying when people only watch one news channel, because you're only getting one side of the story. And what education does for you is gets you to look at things in the round, gets you to question things, gets you to look at balance and for and against, and allows you to kind of rationalize your place in the world. And I think that is so critical to world peace, that actually, that the whole idea that education is kind of, superficial, not really important, it's not going to be the fundamental part of your life, I think is quite naive if we want to have a planet and a world in which we want to live.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely agree. It is about opening your mind, isn't it? Completely. That's great. Thank you so much. Don't forget, as it says at the bottom of the screen, if people want to make comments or ask specific questions of either Di or Grace or about the university in general, then please do comment wherever you're watching, and we'll be able to see those comments and questions and pick up on them. So Grace, over to you. Tell us about the power of education in your current role, which is such an interesting job that you're doing now you're out there in the big wide world.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned before, I work for Students Organising for Sustainability UK, which is a bit of a mouthful, so we abbreviate to the aptly named SOS UK. It's a new charity that was established in September of 2019, so just before the world changed. And it was previously the Sustainability Department of the National Union of Students. And we kind of became our own charity so that we could move further and faster on our sustainability work. And our theory of change is all around the fact that education is formative in creating a more just and sustainable society. And it's not only about educating future leaders, but also about creating change here and now through education. So using our campuses as demonstrations of what society can be, and harnessing the power of students and staff to create positive change together. So our programs centre on the curriculum, campus and community, and we have three main work streams, which are to engage, inspire and empower students to lead on sustainability, to embed sustainability in the formal curriculum, and to make sustainability more inclusive so that it's by and for everyone. So obviously education plays a huge role in our organisational ethos, but also in my day-to-day, I'm working to educate and engage students and staff across the movement in climate justice and sustainability.
Great, thank you. And it's just such an important point, isn't it? Is that by being well educated, we are so much more powerful as individuals, but as a collective as well. You know, we can work on similar agenda and act together. And what you're doing at the moment is such a great example of that. Thanks so much, Grace. So, as you know, we're here in the context of a university, and so I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on higher education, so a university education. And I'm sure we've got people listening and watching at the moment who are thinking about their future and thinking about, you know, whether to go to university or which university to go to, which course to do. So I'm just wondering what you feel, and I'll start with you again, Di, about the role of a university education specifically, and how that might shape your life or influence the future of society as a whole.
So I think because I have a slightly different experience, I came to a university education when I was a bit older. And actually what I realised is how much I had missed, in the sense of having that kind of grounding, as I said, of being able to kind of judge things, assess things, think about things, convey things, work in teams. You know, all of those things came by literally going to work. So, you know, I my first job, I was 17 when I left home. And so my first job was really that learning ground. And actually what I realised is that I would have got so much further sooner if I'd gone to university. I mean, life doesn't always give you the right deck of cards, does it? Or the cards are not necessarily in the right order. And so when I actually finally got to do have a university education, what it really, really taught me is what I'd missed, and that how important it was. I think when, particularly in your formative years, when, you know, who knows what you want to do? You know, who knows what life is going to throw at you? To have that kind of bedrock, those friends, that kind of, you know, ability to function in the world, because of course a lot of being at university is about getting life experience and meeting people from diverse backgrounds and working with people that you don't naturally kind of gravitate towards. So all of that, I think, is just such an incredible bedrock for creating, you know, sort of healthy and kind of well-adjusted people to go into the workplace. So I think I think in hindsight, I would have really benefited from going earlier. Saying that, one of the things is that I have never forgotten those disciplines about managing time, you know, how to function in a team, lots of disciplines around, you know, sort of going the extra mile to find the extra resource to get the extra marks. Did I do that? Probably. So yeah, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I think, you know, sort of the time to do it is when you really don't know what you want to do and what you want to be, and use that experience to help form the kind of person that you want to be and the kind of things that you want to do in your life. Because I think one of the most important lessons is that if you spend a huge amount of your life working, and if you don't know what you want to do eventually, then that can be a really disappointing experience. So using that formative period to go, I like to do this, but more importantly, I don't want a job like this because I know I'm not going to be happy, is all part of that experience. So for me, I think I would, you know, in hindsight, would have benefited from going when I was still a bit younger, although I've always been quite mature, I suppose, you know, in outlook. I definitely think it would have benefited me to actually do it the other way around.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. University education is so much more than just being about the subject that you study. There's so many other things that you develop. It doesn't matter what subject you study. There's so many other aspects of your sort of professional identity and your professional skills that you develop whilst you're here with us.
Yeah,
it's
and
really
networking. You know, things like networking. Despite the fact that we are social creatures, we don't leave school. Our networks, when you're at school, are provided for you because they're people that are sat here and sat there. You know. All of those skills about kind of, you know, how you build relationships and the importance of having those diverse networks literally passes you by unless you're in an environment where that is part of the encouragement and part of making the most of that university experience.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So Grace, tell us a bit about your thoughts on this topic and the role that university education has played, and maybe a little bit about your direct experience at Lincoln as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a really interesting stat from Chuck Hopkins, the UNESCO chair, that 6% of people attend university, but they take up 80% of the leadership positions, which shows you the huge scope there is for influencing future leaders at universities. So it's a failing of our education system if university educated people are the leaders in most sectors that are making bad choices for the people for our planet. So there's huge scope there for changing and influencing the future of society through our educational institutions. And there's huge demand from students. So since 2014, we've been asking students from across the tertiary sector how concerned they are about climate change. You know, that's the area that I'm particularly interested in. And despite the rise in tuition fees and the crash in the jobs market, those figures have remained pretty constant across the board. But in March 2019, we saw the concern rise to 91% of UK students. So there's huge scope there as well to make students agents for change. And personally, I believe that universities have a civic duty to their students and to the communities that they're part of, not to be ivory towers of knowledge that's kind of locked away from the world, but to be these permeable institutions that empower communities and lead our society forward. And Lincoln is doing such amazing work in this space with its projects like the 21st Century Lab, which is opening up thinking about the role of higher education in responding to the challenges we see around the world, like climate change, for instance. So I really recommend people check that project out if they're interested. But in terms of my personal experience as a student at Lincoln, I had the most amazing time, and Lincoln still feels like home to me, which is something that I felt instantly when I came for my first open day visit. And I feel like I really squeezed the juice out of my time as a student at Lincoln. And I'd really encourage others to do the same. So say yes to everything, get involved in as much as you can, because before you know it, it'll all be over and you'll be thrust out into the world of work. The teaching on my course specifically was amazing. It really blew my mind in many respects, completely shifted my thinking and gave me a completely new perspective on the world and our society, the power structures within it, and how people can really create change. I came to university as someone with a bit of an interest in politics and history, but unsure of what that meant for me and what I wanted to do in the world. But I left Lincoln as a more confident and capable person who was still unsure of what the future looked like, because whoever does know what the future looks like. But I was certain that I could and that I should kind of use my values and what I learned at Lincoln to work towards a more just and sustainable future. So that's what I'm going to keep trying to do.
Fantastic, and I completely agree. Say yes to everything. It's a good rule around what you can get involved with at university, and really open your mind to different people, different experiences. It's a really good plan. Grace, we've had a question in which I think you might be able to help with. I'm sure I can help with a little bit with this as well. And we've had a question from Angel, who says she's from Lincoln and she's coming to study history with us this year. Do we have any tips for good preparation for her? So welcome, Angel. First of all, that's really great to hear from you, and we're looking forward to seeing you in September. But Grace, what tips would you give to Angel?
Yeah, well, welcome to the family, Angel. Amazing to hear that you're coming. I would say things that were really beneficial for me was joining lots of Facebook groups and things before coming to Lincoln. So finding one for my course, finding one for my accommodation. Perhaps you might not be staying in halls of residence if you're from Lincoln, but trying to find groups of people that you're likely to interact with on whilst you're a student is a great way to make friends and have a few familiar faces when you come to your first lecture. Check out all of the sports and societies that are on offer on the Students' Union website, because that's another great way to kind of find out what's going on campus and meet people. I think those are probably my main tips, is just doing some internet sleuthing, finding your tribe, finding your community, and that will make it all a lot less nerve-wracking.
Absolutely, and as soon as you get those opportunities to join the groups of, you know, your accommodation or whatever other things that we offer you, then please engage. The other thing I would say is that our Digital Student Life team have a really great Lincoln app, which you'll be able to download very soon. You'll get some information about it, sort of August time, and within that is all sorts of information about and little exercises you can do around preparing for university. Gets you to think about your academic skills as well as about your social and your living skills that you're going to have to develop as you come to university. And there's a whole website as well, which I'm sure Darren, who's lurking behind the scenes, can probably find the Digital Student Life website, so the Learning at Lincoln website, which helps you to think about preparing and getting ready for university study, because it's a whole new world, and many of the skills you've had previously will be helpful for it, but equally there will be lots of new skills you need to develop. So we're here to support and help you through that transition, because we know it can be a little bit scary for some people. Equally, you know, it's very exciting. So hopefully we'll get you on the right track. Thank you very much, Darren, for popping that link up. Great. Well, I thought let's just change direction a little bit. Di, I'd like to pick up on one particular project that you've run, which was with Peter Jackson at the Imperial War Museum. And this was, well, to me, this is a great example of powerful learning from the past to inform the future. So tell us a little bit about this project. And I know Darren's going to play us a clip as well.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Darren to start the video, and I'm going to talk over it. So I apologise if you just wanted to watch the trailer. So our job, obviously, as a museum is to make sure that people understand the past. And there was a real problem, actually, from an education point of view, in that quite a lot of young students think that the world was in black and white at that time. And that also these people were very, sort of were armies, etc. So lots of myths. So working with Peter Jackson, who, sort of most people know for The Hobbit and for those films, was to make the most of the new technology that's available for film colorization and sound recording, and then to match it to our oral history archives, which are the stories spoken by the people themselves, and then map them into color. So what you're seeing is a colorized version. Now, this film is 6 years of my life, so I still get goosebumps every time I see this trailer, because, as you can see, that there are certain lessons in life, which is, thank goodness for NHS dentistry, when you look at actually the state of people's teeth. But one of the really striking things about this film is how young people were. And it's a really good way to connect to young people when they're seeing faces that they're recognizing. And it doesn't work if it's not if it's in black and white. So this was, an incredible collaboration. It's been seen in by 300 million people worldwide, and we hope is a really strong piece of legacy about the way in which you can use historical evidence, historical testimony to bring that story and the story of the First World War and the people that fought in it back to life. We're kind of giving them their identity back by what we're trying to do. So that was our project, and it's so funny in places where they run round the film so that they're in it twice, and also you see them, you see just an incredible sense of humanity, which people assume Trench is bad, it was all awful. But this is people, again, showing their stoicism and making the best of an incredibly difficult situation. So I apologise for the plug, but it is available on DVD and download. So please, make free of it. It's it's a project that I'm very proud of.
And so you should be. I mean, it's just an incredible film. I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone. And I think, as I say, it's a brilliant example of the power of somebody else's experiences informing your own views on the world. And you're right. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we've all seen those old black and white films and learned from those, but actually bringing them to life with the colour just makes such a huge difference. To the way you do things.
Yeah, we did a lot of testing with audiences, and you could see that actually their time watching colour film was treble people watching black and white films. So we did a lot of kind of study before we ventured it. And of course, the thing is, it's making the best use of technology. And I think that's the other thing about education, is that, you know, we are moving forward as you know, with technology all the time. And to be able to apply the best of modern technology to a historic archive was absolutely revolutionary, and it's never been done. And we've had lots of approaches from people saying, could we do that with this, or could we do that with that? To which we're actually saying no, because it's not revolutionary enough. This was revolutionary, and I think you have to surprise people, and you have to challenge people to look at the world in a different way. And Grace will know this from her work, is that, you know, sort of, it's those facts, it's those little nuggets, like your nuggets, you know, about leadership and university things. It's those things which, you know, we need to get audiences to understand. And if we can do that, we also distributed the film to every single secondary school with a resource pack and with film notes, etc., so that we could also kind of, you know, embed it within the curriculum. We had a slight problem because what we didn't realize is that when you colorize film, the blood looks worse. So the film classification unit upped the classification from 12 to 14, which meant that we had to rewrite all of the education resources within a week of launching the film in the cinemas. So it's been one of those projects, but I actually think that the lifetime legacy of it will be astonishing.
It's incredible, isn't it? It will just last and last and have such an impact. So it's a fantastic project. Grace, on a similar theme, what for you in your role at the moment, what's sort of the most powerful thing that you think helps to educate people around the topic of sustainability? Is it hearing stats? Is it seeing the impact? Is it thinking about the future? What sort of things what's your hook in that context?
That's such a good question, and it's something that I'm still trying to perfect and learn. But it's about kind of knowing your audience, I think, because everyone responds differently to different kind of stimulus in terms of those kind of things. For some people, it's the cold, hard data. For other people, it's the personal human stories. And just as Diane's been saying about seeing the images and it sparking that empathy response, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, which is a huge thing when we're having discussions about climate justice and those around the world who are already feeling the implications of climate change. So yeah, it really depends on the audience, but I'd say those human stories are really, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd completely agree. And that leads us nicely into the next topic that I'd like to talk about, which sort of follows on from this idea of, you know, having a hook to really engage people and to allow them to experience the power of education. Often it's the teachers, isn't it, who teach us at all different levels, who really inspire that and engage us and really motivate us to learn. So I was just wondering, you know, who's inspired you in your career or in your education? Di, do you want to start?
It's a really interesting question, because I think I've had the privilege of some great educators that weren't just teachers. They were also bosses that I've had. They've been hugely inspirational and great leaders. But I have to say, I have to vote for my English teacher when I was at secondary school, because she was so concerned that I was falling behind. I'm really not good at remembering grammar, and I went to a school where that was really important. And so she actually came round to my house every Saturday morning for an entire term to make sure that I didn't fall behind in my English. And even now, she's in my head whenever I write anything. So I must admit, if I was going to get any points when I went to university, it was my ability to reference that was absolutely nailed in my head, as long as they used Harvard. But, you know, they was completely, you know, when people use apostrophes or semicolons inappropriately, I can hear it in my head going, what's wrong with that? And she was just, and actually, given how important English is, given how important your ability to structure, communicate, you know, I had this terrible tendency to switch tense halfway through a sentence, and she kind of, without any violence whatsoever, beat it out of me. And so she remains in my heart and my head I think, and probably will do till the end of time.
Absolutely, yeah. Those core skills around English and maths are so important, aren't they? And it can be incredibly frustrating if you're not quite there. And I guess that's, you know, around building confidence, and certainly, you know, that's something I would look at. You know, all the teachers that surround me every day. You know, that is part of their role, is about building students' confidence and giving them the belief in themselves that they can do it. It's just so important as we progress through life.
I'm not sure I always value giving up every Saturday morning for an entire term, though, but that was at the time. With hindsight, I get the value.
Yes, probably made you quite grumpy at the time, but no.
Oh yeah, I have a reputation for being slightly grumpy on occasion.
Great. And Grace, what about you? Who's particularly inspired you through your educational career?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to kind of single one person out, as there's, you know, been so many amazing teachers, you know, throughout my formal education, and teachers really, they have so much power over in the sense that they can influence and inspire you and your entire future in so many ways. And just as Diane said, you carry them with you after they've finished teaching you. And I definitely feel that about you know, teachers from secondary school all the way through to my you know, first bosses at the Students' Union. They taught me so much. But I have to give a big shout out, obviously, to the lecturers in the School of Social and Political Science at Lincoln, who, as well as being really dynamic in the lecture theatre, are all like leaders in their respective fields of research, which was just so inspiring for me as an undergraduate. And they all brought their passion and personal experience and expertise to their teaching, and made what could be considered quite dusty or scholarly topics or theories into really, you know, alive and relevant lenses to look at the world through. And they really inspired me to be an agent of change rather than just like a passive holder of knowledge. So yeah, teachers have so much power.
That's a great way to put it, and you're absolutely right. Somebody who's really passionate about their subject area, that's what we always want, because you know, that really inspires the people around them, doesn't it? And sometimes that's about, you know, having debate rather than actually just saying, you know, this is what it is. It's debating those topics and really engaging students in that way. You know, that's definitely really important part of your education. Great, thanks, Grace. It's good to hear that you still remember us here back at Lincoln. Now you're doing your really exciting, high-powered job. So I think the other thing that would be nice to touch on today is about the future. I mean, obviously, in this sort of nearly we hope post-COVID era, there's been a lot of uncertainty for, you know, young people who are perhaps thinking about their futures, maybe applying to university, or maybe wondering whether to apply to university or not. So I'm just wondering if either or both of you had any advice for somebody who's sort of sitting there watching this at the moment, thinking, well, not quite sure if I want to carry on with education, not quite sure what I want to do. What advice would you give them? Di, do you want to go first again?
I can try. So I'm very old now, so remembering what a young person is like is probably not relevant. So I think my goddaughter has just opted to do a master's at this point in time, and I think the conversation that we had around that was timing around what's happening in the economy at the moment. It's looking at the changing nature of the world, you know, sort of what will employment look like, you know, what are the opportunities. So she decided that now was the perfect time to do her master's, because she was already continuing her study, but also because it gave her more time to think more about her place in the world, given the fact that it's so difficult, isn't it, to pick your place in the world anyway. So to have the kind of confusion and the mixed messaging and the, you know, this is good, this is bad, you know, all of the right wing, left wing, you know, all of this stuff, I think it's a really good time now to place yourself in the best position to make the most of the opportunities that will be there in the future, as opposed to saying, well, you know, I'll have a either a gap year or I'll go and work, because it's really, I from personal experience, it's really difficult to go back into education once you've left, because you end up with things like mortgages and cars and debt and all of that kind of stuff that is nothing to do with going to university. It's more likely, from my perspective, to be shoes. But you just have to think that you know, sort of at this point in time, for me, I think there is a moment that says that now is the good time to build the best possible launch platform for yourself. And then you'll be able to cope with what goes off in the world. And that was definitely Molly's decision, was definitely to carry on and do her masters. And of course, I would, as she's doing history, of course, I would encourage her to do that.
But of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good point you make about return to education. Particularly, we have some amazing students who do come back into education later in life. So I'm always full of admiration for them. Yeah, exactly, because it's really not easy, is it, at all? And that motivation is just key, isn't it? And I guess that's then what you get from the process, isn't it? You're very self-motivated, and you know, we have some amazing success stories from some of our slightly more mature students. So
and again, I've also got friends who've gone back into education because they have got to the point where what is happening in the world they don't like, so they're going, you know what, I'm not going to do this job anymore, it's too stressful, you know, so I'm actually going to go back and recraft my skills. And whether that's you know, sort of a small piece of formal education, or whether it's a postgrad qualification, I still would like to do my PhD. You know, there's still an aspiration, I think, for us all to have that kind of, you know, periods of formal and informal education. So I've seen both sides of it. I think if you're making a decision when you're young, I would encourage it. But, you know, sort of my view is we live a long time now. You better enjoy it. You know, you better enjoy the things that you can do and make the most of the opportunities. And I hope that people, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? You know, life is difficult. And so, you know, grasping the opportunities, as Grace said, I love that phrase, which is say yes to everything. You know, this is probably one of the most solid moments to say yes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we've got a comment from MS in the chat saying, loved the history students when I was young, but found myself plunged into engineering and now marketing. So what's a great example of changing your direction, and actually, no doubt, building on the skills that you started as a history student, but then, you know, managing to go into lots of different directions. And we certainly see that with some of our students as well, who maybe change direction. And it's fine, because, you know, those skills are still helpful, even if you might not think being a historian is good for being an engineer. Actually, you know, they absolutely are.
I just hope that MS is loving marketing. I really hope you love it. That's
exactly. Great. That's the most important thing, isn't it? Grace, what advice would you give to people watching at the moment, maybe thinking about what they're going to do in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, hey, going to university might not be right for you right now. I sometimes feel in secondary school and in college, you're kind of made to feel like it's the only option and you're a failure if you don't choose that for yourself. And that's absolutely not the case. There are so many different routes that you can take, and further education takes many, many forms. But if you do decide to go to university, your university experience might look completely different to your peers at school or at college. You can do a full-time degree, you can do it part-time, you can commute or live in halls of residence, or after the past year, we know we can all do things completely remotely now. There are so many options, and I really, really advise people to explore all of them before discounting university as an option for them, because it can be the most incredible experience, and you find your tribe of people and delve deep into a subject that you're passionate about, and perhaps it will make your next steps more clear for you. I know it definitely did for me. So go to as many open days as you can, meet the lecturers, talk to current students, check out the SU for their sports and societies and all of the opportunities they have on offer. I could rave about Lincoln all day. It's just the most wonderful place, and I think everyone should study there, in my personal opinion. But after doing all of those things, you'll know when it feels right for you, and I hope it will be wonderful.
Thank you, Grace. That's brilliant. And I think the other thing I always say to people when I meet them at open days is that sometimes going to university feels a bit like stepping into an abyss, particularly if you haven't got friends or relatives who've been to university, because you don't quite know what's going to happen. And just to be aware that there's so much support, particularly when you first arrive. So it's not like we sort of set you off and go, off you go, just go and get on with it. There's academic support, obviously, from your tutors and your lecturers, but more importantly, sometimes for many of our students is the pastoral support we offer. So everything from financial support through to living arrangements and all those kind of things, which sometimes can feel pretty scary if you've never done them on your own. So we're here to help, and we're not here just to let you flounder. So lots of support available. So that's other good questions to ask at open days: is what kind of support can I expect, and what kind of a support is available to me, and how do I find it? Because it is definitely there, and such an important part of your experience as a university student. Great. Well, I think we're sort of more or less coming to an end. Believe it or not, we've been chatting for 40 minutes.
Can I just answer a question? So Ralph has got a question in there about our research room. Oh God, we can't wait for the lifting of COVID restrictions. So our problem with the research room has been, of course, that we've had to furlough most of our staff. And of course, because of COVID, we couldn't give access to the collections. So the research room is open on a limited basis, but because of our financial situation, we're only open 5 days a week, but we can't wait. So the reading room is booked until September, but we're hoping as soon as the COVID restrictions are lifted, or the 19th of July, that we can expand opening and give more desks. Because the problem is, with the 2 meter distance, we're down to, sort of one man and his dog, literally, in the reading room. So we are desperate to get access to collections up and running again. So thank you for the question, but I hope you're encouraged. We just can't wait. So all of our library team are going, can we? And I'm going, no, unfortunately, you still have to have that screen there. So we're on it.
That's great to hear, Di. Thank you. Yes, I was just about to say we've got a question about your facilities, and we'll let you know what's going to happen, because it's so important, isn't it?
No, it's just such a nice, because sort of as you will know, research deadlines haven't changed. So there are people, we've got publishers, and researchers, and there is a limit to how much you're able to do access to. We have 8 million photographs. We have sort of a collection of 31 million items. And of course, they're not all digitized. And so, it's a conversation we're having about how we accelerate digitization. But also, one of the pleasures is coming into the museum and using our staff's expertise as well. And we're really missing that. We're definitely really missing that.
Well, it'll be fantastic to get back to some kind of normal, let's hope, in the future. And we all look forward to coming back to our precious museums, which are just such an important part of life for many of us. So thank you, Di. That's really great to hear. Well, I think it's time to draw this conversation to a close. I think we've had a really great broad chat about the power of education, and I hope people have enjoyed it. And I really hope that anyone thinking about university in the future has now been persuaded by our strong arguments to come to university, and hopefully, of course, come to see us here at Lincoln. It's really great to hear from everybody, and thank you very much. And Grace, look forward to watching your career progress in a very speedy way. And Di, I shall see you soon.
Thank you
very much, both of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.